When a municipal justice system decides to write off a 1 in 12 failure rate in its murder suspect monitoring program as a mere administrative variance, you aren't looking at a management challenge. You are witnessing the systemic liquidation of public safety in the third largest market in America.
On electronic monitoring in Cook County are missing. Those monitors run by the chief judge's office keep them out of jail until their trial.
Now that office admits it has no idea where all those people are. Our Sabrina Franza is always investigating. She's been tracking electronic monitoring issues for months now, and you joined us with this update on where these people are.
We're tracking the program. The chief judge is tracking the program, but now we have these numbers. Turns out 8% of the people on the county's electronic monitoring program are unaccounted for. This matters because, as we've been reporting, warrants are issued for these people's arrest because they're trying to evade justice. The man accused of shooting and killing Chicago police officer John Bartholomew was one of those people before he was taken into custody and charged with murder.
We are documenting an unprecedented audit of evasion in Cook County, Illinois, where the internal controls of the chief judge's office have reached a state of total structural collapse, leaving hundreds of high-risk human liabilities to simply vanish into the Chicago wind. These aren't low-level misdemeanants who forgot to pay a parking ticket. We are talking about 246 individuals, many accused of murder, aggravated battery, and criminal sexual assault, who have effectively redacted themselves from the government's ledger while the authorities admit they have zero idea where they are. This isn't just a glitch in the software of an ankle monitor. It is a fiduciary default on the social contract, proving that when the management at the top prioritizes the cost-effectiveness of a monitor over the physical security of the tax base, the voter shareholders are the ones who ultimately absorb the loss at a lethal interest rate. I am Camilo Motado, and this is Camilo's house. As a certified public accountant and forensic auditor, I approach a crime report like a distressed entity review where the inventory, the accused, is walking out of the warehouse, the jail, without a receipt or a security guard. In a standard financial audit, if you find that 8% of your most volatile assets have shrinkage and cannot be accounted for, you immediately issue an adverse opinion and flag the entire jurisdiction for systemic governance risk. Today, we are performing a Cook County Monitoring Insolvency Audit. We are analyzing the materiality of the missing 246, the operational default that led to the death of Officer John Bartholomew, and the economic contagion that has turned Chicago's retail districts into prescription deserts. This is the moment where the bat signal of government transparency has been redacted by the very people sworn to uphold the ledger of law. The operational trigger for this forensic fallout is the latest data extraction from the Cook County Electronic Monitoring Program. Out of 3,048 people released pre-trial, roughly 8%, 246 people, are currently AWOL, unaccounted for, missing, and evading justice. From an investigative standpoint, the risk profile of this missing inventory is what makes this a critical control weakness. Almost 20% of the entire program is comprised of individuals charged with violent crimes. Specifically, 8% are charged with murder, 7% with aggravated battery, and 4% with criminal sexual assault. In auditing terms, the county has issued junk bonds to the community, claiming these individuals can be trusted to self-report while wearing a plastic bracelet that can be liquidated with a pair of household scissors. When the chief judge's office admits they have no clue where these individuals are in the state of Illinois, they are certifying their own management failure. The uninsured loss of this policy was felt most tragically in the case of 6-year-old Alfonso Talley. Talley is the forensic proof that an ankle monitor is not a fixed asset but a synthetic hedge that fails when the internal controls of personal responsibility are absent. Records show Talley had been in trouble for his adult life, a negative asset with a history of defaults. He systemically ignored his curfew until the battery resource of his monitor went dead. Instead of a mandatory retrieval by the MPD, Talley remained in the wind until he went on a crime spree that ended with a mother of 3 being pistol-whipped and Officer John Bartholomew being liquidated from this life. Another officer is currently fighting for survival in a state of critical impairment. As an auditor, I track the cost of non-enforcement. When you write off the risk of a dead battery, you accrue a debt of human blood that can never be reconciled. Why does this policy of insolvency persist? As a CPA, I look at the incentive structure. Maintaining an individual on an ankle monitor is cost-effective for the county budget in the short term. It is cheaper than warehousing for them in a high-security cell. However, this is a false economy. While the budget ledger looks cleaner, the risk portfolio of the city is over-leveraged. Mayor Brandy Boy Johnson, with his sub-10% approval rating, has famously characterized the criminal justice system as a sickness. Many judges in Cook County share this philosophical leaning, viewing the perpetrators as victims of the system. But in a post-verification market, the voter stakeholders are beginning to demand an audit of the bench. If a judge signs off on the release of a murder suspect who then liquidates a police officer, that judge should face a reputational clawback that impairs their ability to remain on the board of directors, the court. This safety default is causing a secondary contagion in the Chicago economy. In our previous audit, we disclosed the material breach at the Walgreens on 86th and Cottage Grove. That store liquidated its operations because it was losing over $1 million annually to inventory shrinkage, theft, and security surcharges. Theft at that location was 16%, 4 times the national company average. When management, the city, refuses to enforce the internal controls of the street, the private capital Walgreens, Starbucks, performs a strategic divestment. Billionaire Ken Griffin already moved his multi-billion-dollar Citadel asset to Miami because he couldn't certify the safety of his grader. Employees. Chicago is currently auditing the rich and protecting the criminals until the only thing left on the balance sheet is toxic debt and boarded-up buildings. I want to acknowledge the complexity of the ledger for the judges. As we documented in our report on the Rice Street Jail in Atlanta, many facilities are insolvent due to overcrowding and unsanitary conditions. A judge in Cook County has to make a high-volatility decision every afternoon. Do I jam another body into a jail that is already in technical default on human rights? Or do I release them on a credit line of trust with an ankle monitor? It is a no-win transaction. But when you choose trust for a person accused of pistol whipping or murder, you are gambling the public equity of the neighborhood. You are hedged against the jail capacity, but you are shorting the safety of the citizens. My forensic verdict is that Cook County is currently operationally insolvent in its approach to pretrial release. You cannot redact the risk of a murder charge by throwing an ankle thing on someone and hoping for the best. An 8% failure to locate rate is a material misstatement of the program's effectiveness. Until the chief judge and the mayor's office recapitalize the internal controls of the police and the detention infrastructure, Chicago will remain a distressed market where safety is a redacted footnote. The audit of the streets is deep in the red. 246 high-risk suspects are in the wind. 1 officer is delisted, dead, and the management is monthly updating the data instead of liquidating the problem. This is the anatomy of a governance default, where the truth is the only asset that the city refuses to verify. I want to hear from you. Is an 8% missing rate for violent offenders a reasonable operational variance, or is it a material breach of fiduciary duty by the courts? Should judges be jointly and severally liable when a person they release on a monitor liquidates another citizen? Let me know in the comments. Your perspective is the only audit that matters when the safety of your neighborhood and the integrity of the law are sitting on the negotiation table. I am Camilo Motado, and this is Camilo's House. Subscribe to stay informed on the numbers, the laws, and the truth behind the headlines. Stay safe.